Hare Krishna. So, very warm welcome to all of you for today's session on the Bhagavad Gita. We'll start our session with the prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we discussed in our previous session, Lord Krishna, he tells Arjun about the importance of regulating the process of eating and sleeping. Some more aspects about that we'll be discussing in today's session. But in the previous session, we discussed Lord Krishna, he tells Arjun about the regulation in eating and sleeping. And if you remember, we discussed that how regulation of eating means neither eating too much nor eating too less. Now, what is the meaning of not eating too much or not eating too less? That means that we don't eat useless things or nonsensical things. We only eat what is good for our spiritual advancement. Okay. And then excessive sleep is also not good. We discussed about that also. But prior to that, Lord Krishna, he told Arjun about the yoga process which people used to follow 5,000 years back, where people will go to the forest. If you remember, we discussed about it in our previous two sessions. People would go to the forest, they would find a seat for themselves, they'll cover it with kusha grass, then deer skin or loin cloth, then sit on it with their head, neck and body in a erect line, and then regulate their breathing process, focus their mind on whom? All these things, all these burdensome work which people would do, what was the purpose? That also Krishna says, we discussed in our previous session. Lord Krishna told that all this is meant to attain me, making me the ultimate goal of life. We discussed, Krishna says, Mat Paraha. It is all meant, and the people who would follow this process, they would make me as the ultimate goal of life, and by following this process, and in this process, they would also follow the life of brahmacharya. And if you remember, we discussed about brahmacharya also. Brahmacharya means brahme charati. Brahma means Krishna, and charya means to lead our life in such a way so that we can attain Krishna. That is called brahmacharya. And of course, celibacy is one of the aspects of brahmacharya. So people would lead life of brahmacharya. But ultimately, the goal was to attain Krishna, to attain love for Krishna. That was the ultimate goal. And then finally, Lord Krishna says that Nirvana Parama. And in this way, the practitioners of this yoga process, they would attain Nirvana Paramam. They would go back to home, back to the spiritual world, back to the abode of Krishna. And Lord Krishna says, Mat Sanstham Adhigachati. Such devotees, those who used to follow this process, because the goal was Krishna, so ultimately they'll go back to Krishna. So this was what we discussed in our previous session. So now today we'll begin our discussion with text 17, shloka number 17 of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Yuktahara viharasya yukta cheshtasya karmasu yukta swapnavabodhasya yogo bhavati dukkha. Yuktahara viharasya yukta cheshtasya karmasu yukta swapnavabodhasya yogo bhavati dukkha. Translation: One who is regulated in his eating, sleeping, work, and recreation becomes free from all material miseries by engaging in devotional service or yoga. Now you see. So this is basically an extension of the previous shloka. If you remember, in the previous shloka, which also was the last shloka of the previous session, we discussed, Lord Krishna talks about regulation of eating and sleeping. We discussed that Lord Krishna, he says that one who eats too much or eats too little or sleeps too much or sleeps too little, such a person cannot become a yogi. Yogi means a devotee of the Lord. So for such a person to practice devotional service, to practice bhakti is very difficult. So too much of eating is also prohibited. Too less eating is also prohibited. That means moderate eating. So too much of eating, what is the meaning of too much eating? Too much eating means we should not eat nonsensical things. We should only eat to maintain our body. And also we should eat which will nourish the spirit soul. And that food is called prasadam. We offer food to Krishna. Krishna has told us in the 9th chapter. We will discuss. In the 9th chapter, Krishna says, what are the food items which we can offer to Krishna? So in the 9th chapter, in the 26th shloka, Lord Krishna talks about it. That we can offer patram pushpam phalam toyam, fruits, vegetables, milk, juices, grains. So with all these vegetarian items, we can prepare nice, delicious food and we can offer to Krishna, and then we honor that food, which is called prasadam. So that is called spiritual way of eating. We spiritualize our eating. Okay. Then too much of sleep is also bad. Why? Because too much of sleeping puts us in mode of ignorance. Less sleeping also puts us in ignorance, because then intelligence will not work. Because this body is like a vehicle. And if a vehicle is there, you have to supply whatever is required to run this vehicle. So if you have a car, you need to put fuel in the car. For example, petrol or diesel. You have to put fuel, only then the car will run. So similarly, this body is also like a machine. And this body has some requirements. It requires some food to eat, a good amount of sleep. So good amount of sleep does not mean excessive sleeping. So in our Vedic scriptures, it is mentioned that 6 to 7 hours of sleeping is too much. It's too much for the body. We should not sleep beyond 6 hours, at most 7 hours. If a person is not feeling satisfied in 6 hours of sleep, then 7 hours. But although 7 hours is also too much, 6 hours of good sleep. And how will we get good sleep? So for good sleep, we have to sleep on time and we have to sleep early. You see, this whole material nature is designed in such a way, except human beings, because there are 8,400,000 species of life forms. Out of them, human beings are one of the species. So except human beings, no other species on earth, they are awake after sunset. Most of the animals, if you go to a forest or a jungle, you would see that all the animals, they sleep during the night. And no species in this world, except human beings, work so hard for 2 meals a day. That's strange, isn't it? The amount of hard work that humans do for 2 meals a day, it's strange and it's too much. So that's what Lord Krishna is saying here in this shloka. You can see Yukta Ahar. Yukta Ahar means as much as required to maintain the body. That kind of ahar. To maintain the body and soul, because spiritual also. If we eat nonsensical things, it degrades, the soul degrades. It brings our spiritual degradation. So we eat so that body is satisfied and we also maintain our spiritual position. Okay. So yukta ahar, that means regulated eating. Then vihar. Now what is the meaning of vihar? So vihar means recreation. So there are certain duties which every human being has to do. If he is a Brahmana, he has certain duties. If he is a Kshatriya, he has certain duties. If he is a Grihastha, he is a householder, he has certain duties. Right? So there are certain duties for all human beings. Any activity apart from that duty can be called as recreation. Generally, people, they go to visit some places or they play sports for recreation, isn't it? So vihar means recreation or entertainment. So this also has to be regulated. It's not that we just go overboard in playing sports or in entertainment. So when we were in school, one of our faculty, so he used to tell us, he had a quote which he used to say many times. So he would say that you spend your childhood playing, you spend your youthhood sleeping, and then you will have to spend your old age crying. If you spend your childhood by playing and you spend your youthhood by sleeping, then you will have to spend your old age crying. Why you have to spend your old age crying? Because a person does not give importance to the spirit soul when he is a child or when he is young. So then when he grows old, he realizes that I have wasted my human life. But in old age, you cannot do anything because body does not work. So if body will not work, how will we follow Krishna consciousness? How will we follow the principles of Bhagavad Gita? So at that time, a person becomes helpless. He cannot follow the instructions of God. He cannot follow the instructions of Krishna. And he cries that I wasted my human life. Right? So that is why Vihar also, it should be regulated and it should be bare minimum. Okay. So Yukta Ahar, Vihar. Then the third thing is Yukta Cheshtasya Karmasu. Cheshtasya Karmasu means our duties, our material duties. So according to our Vedic scriptures, our whole day, which is 24 hours, should be divided into 3 parts. Okay. So 8 hours can be given for upkeep of the body. So in those 8 hours, everything which is related to the body we should do. For example, sleeping 6 hours and then 2 hours for eating, taking bath and all these things. So 8 hours for the body, 8 hours for our material duties, especially those who are householders, they have to do some material work to maintain their family. So 8 hours for that. And rest of the 8 hours, which is left, 1/3 of it, 1/3 of 24 hours, we should give for Krishna. We should give for loving devotional service to Krishna. So in this way, we have to divide our whole life. Okay. So this is one. This is recommendation in our Vedic scriptures also. So Yukta Cheshtasya Karmasu means that we have to regulate our activities or our duties also. Not that whole life we keep doing our material duties and we forget about Krishna. And then the fourth aspect is Yukta Swapna Avabodhasya. Swapna means sleeping and Avabodhasya means wake, wake when we are awake. Okay. So Yukta Swapna Avabodhasya means regulation in sleep. So in this way, eating, sleeping, work and recreation, all these activities must be regulated. Why? So that, why these activities must be regulated? So that whatever time is left, we can give for Krishna. Because human life is meant for Krishna realization. All other activities, because we have to do it, we cannot avoid it, so we do it. But the primary goal of life is Krishna realization. So we should give bare minimum to all these activities, and rest of the time which is left, we should use for Krishna. That is the goal of human life. Now text 18, shloka number 18. Yada viniyatam chittam atmanyevavatisthate nisprihah sarva kamebhyo yukta ityuchyate tada. Yada viniyatam chittam atmanyevavatisthate nisprihah sarva kamebhyo yukta ityuchyate tada. Translation. A person is said to be perfectly engaged in yoga, devotional service, when he is able to regulate the mind and senses, devoid of all material desires and situated on a spiritual platform. Now you see. So what is Lord Krishna saying here? So he is saying that yada viniyatam chittam. Yada viniyatam chittam. Viniyatam means to regulate. Okay. Chittam means our consciousness, which includes the mind and the senses, because our consciousness is directly influenced by our mind and senses. Okay. So Viniyatam Chitta means to regulate the mind and senses. Atmani eva avatisthate. Atmani means to situate ourselves on Atman. Atman means spiritual platform. Eva avatisthate. Avatisthate means to situate ourselves on spiritual platform. Then nisprihaha. Nisprihaha means no material desires or no material expectations. Nispriha sarva kamebhyo. Sarva kamebhyo means a person who is detached from all his activities or the fruits of his activities. Yukta iti uchyate tada. And such a person is truly engaged in loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Yukta means to be engaged. So viniyatam, so that is why regulation is very important. The word which is used in this shloka is viniyatam. Viniyatam means to regulate ourselves. Because if you remember in the previous session, in one of our previous sessions, I gave an example to substantiate what is called regulation. Because sometimes people think that if we regulate ourselves, we lose our freedom. But that's not true. When we regulate ourselves, we become more free. That is the real cause of freedom. That is true freedom, when we regulate ourselves. And if you remember, I gave an example also to substantiate this. That there was a village, and in that village, there were huge floods of rivers. And whole village was getting washed away by the force of or the waves of the water. But a cow was tied there was a cow which was tied with a rope to a corner of land, and that cow got saved. That tremendous wave of the flooding water, it washed away the whole village. Everyone was washed away. Everyone was blown away by the water. But the cow, which was tied to a corner of a village, got saved. It didn't get washed away. Why? Because the cow was tied to a particular place. So, this material world is also compared to a violent ocean. It is called Bhav Sagar. It's an ocean. And when the waves of the oceans come, when the waves of the ocean will come, it will blow away everything. But only a person who is tied, who has tied himself to proper rules and regulations. What kind of rules and regulations? So a person may ask that, what kind of rules and regulations? So the rules and regulations are given by the spiritual master, our guru. And guru has to be a pure devotee of Krishna, and he must have knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, how will he give rules and regulations? Because guru's words are non-different from Krishna's words. So, and that is why you see the word disciple in Sanskrit, the word disciple, the word which is used in Sanskrit for disciple is shishya. And the word shishya comes from the root word, which is shas. From shas word comes the word shishya. And the word shas actually means, because from shas word there is another word which is called shasan. So shasan means ruling. Okay. And from shasan comes the word anushasan. Now, anu means to follow. The word anu means to follow. And anushasan, shasan means ruling. So, who's ruling? So, shishya means disciple. So, shishya means when a person accepts the rulings given by the spiritual master and he follows it completely. He follows it perfectly. So, for a disciple, the words of the spiritual master are his life and soul. His mission of life is to follow the words of the spiritual master, guru. So that is the meaning of vinyatam. Vinyatam means to regulate ourselves in such a way that we follow the words given by the spiritual master, because the words or the instructions of spiritual master are non-different from Krishna. So when we follow the words of Guru, then we please Krishna. This is the process in which we advance in bhakti. So that is what Lord Krishna is telling here, that in this way we situate ourselves from, gradually we raise ourselves from material platform to spiritual platform by pleasing Krishna. And how we please Krishna? By following strictly the words of the spiritual master, by regulating ourselves according to the rules and regulations given by the spiritual master. So a person who follows the rules and regulations given by the spiritual master, just like regular hearing of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, that means regular hearing of Krishna Katha, regular hearing of Krishna Katha. Krishna Katha means Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And daily chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So a person who follows this, Shravanam and Kirtanam. Shravanam means to hear Krishna Katha on a regular basis, and Kirtanam means to chant 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day. So a person who follows these two processes, he is called a sadhak. Sadhaka. Sadhak means a person who is following the rules and regulations given by Guru. And a person who follows these rules and regulations, gradually in the beginning, when he starts to follow the rules and regulations, he is called sadhak because he is trying to perform sadhana. Now, what is sadhana? Sadhana means the rules and regulations given by Guru. That is called sadhana. So, a person who follows the sadhana, he is called as sadhak. And when a person becomes perfect in his sadhana, he becomes a sadhu. So, initial stage is sadhak and advanced stage is sadhu. And the process is called sadhana. So, sadhana means the rules and regulations given by Guru or spiritual master. So, when we follow the rules and regulations given by Guru, we please Krishna. Right? And that is why you see Krishna in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. What does he say? That paritranaya sadhuna. I descend in this material world for my sadhus. So, sadhu means a person who has perfected his sadhana. A perfect sadhak or an advanced sadhak is called a sadhu. And a sadhu, because he is dear to Krishna. Why? Because he pleases Krishna. Because he follows the instructions given by Krishna. And how we get instructions given of Krishna? Through Guru, through spiritual master. So, Vinyatam means to follow the rules and regulations given by Guru. We become a sadhak. And then gradually we reach the stage of sadhu when we become dear to Krishna. So, this is the process mentioned by Krishna. Now, text 19, shloka number 19. Very beautiful shloka, very beautiful example given in this shloka. Yatha deepo nivatastho ningate sopama smrita yogino yat chittasya yunjato yogamatmanah. Yatha deepo nivatastho ningate sopama smrita yogino yat chittasya yunjato yogamatmanah. Translation: as an oil lamp situated in a place without wind does not get agitated, so the yogi whose mind is controlled is steady in his practice of yoga, devotional service on a spiritual platform. Now you see. So what is Lord Krishna saying here? Such a beautiful example is given by Lord Krishna in this shloka. He gives example of an oil lamp. Okay. So he's saying that yatha deepo, deepo means oil lamp. So yatha deepo nivatastho, nivat, vat means air and nivat means where there is no air. Okay, where there is no supply of air. So yatha deepo nivatastho. Yatha means just like. So Lord Krishna is telling that just like an oil lamp which is situated at a windless place, ningate, na ingate. Ingate means to get agitated. Ningate means does not get agitated. So an oil lamp which is situated at a windless place, that oil lamp does not get agitated. Sopama smrita. Sa upama. So this upama is given, or this example is given by Lord Krishna. And then he says, yogino yat chittasya. Similarly, a yogi or a devotee of Krishna, yat chittasya. Chittasya means whose consciousness. Yunjato yogam atmanah. Similarly, a pure devotee or a devotee who is engaged in loving devotional service to Krishna, his consciousness also does not get agitated. Why? You see, yunjato. Yunjato means to be engaged. So because the devotee is engaged in Krishna's service, engaged in what? Yogam atmanah. Yogam means in union with Krishna. So when a devotee is engaged in loving devotional service to Krishna, his consciousness does not get agitated. You see, very beautiful example given by Lord Krishna. This reminds me of a story. So once a man went with his daughter to the temple of Lord Krishna. So that temple was a busy temple. A lot of people used to come to that temple, and the father, he would take the daughter every day to the temple. And the temple will be crowded with so many people. So one day the daughter asked the father that, my dear father, every day you come to this temple, but this temple is flooded with so many people, so many devotees come here. So how are you able to focus your consciousness? How are you able to meditate on the beautiful form of Lord Krishna? How are you able to focus yourself at such a crowded place? So the father said, okay, I'll give you the answer. So one day the father told the daughter that, so the father, he gave the daughter a bowl of milk, and that milk was filled up to the brim of the bowl. Okay. So the father gave this bowl of milk to the daughter and told the daughter that you take this bowl of milk from the entrance of the temple and you give it to the Swamiji or the devotee who is there in the kitchen of the temple. So the daughter, she was very careful, because if she did not take care, the milk would splash, or the milk would fall from the bowl, right? Because it was filled up to the brim. So daughter very carefully, she, with great care and attention, she took this bowl of milk and gave to the devotee who was cooking bhoga, or cooking for Lord Krishna. So then the daughter returned and said, my dear father, I have performed the job given by you. So the father asked the daughter that, while you are doing this, did you see there was one devotee who was playing a flute in the temple? She said, no. And yeah, again the father asked, did you see there was one devotee who was singing songs of Krishna? She said, no, I could not see anyone, or I could not pay my attention to anyone else, because my attention was fixed up at the bowl of milk, so that the milk should not fall from this bowl. So the father said, this is how our consciousness should be. Because your consciousness was focused on the bowl of milk, your consciousness did not get deviated from anything else. Similarly, when I am in the temple, I am focused on Krishna. And that is why my consciousness never gets deviated by any amount of people who may be there in the temple. So much of crowd may be there, but I never get agitated. Why? Because my focus, my consciousness is absorbed in Krishna. Right? So, yatha deepo nivatastho nengate sopama smrita. So that is why Lord Krishna is saying here that the flame of the oil lamp, when there is no wind, the flame does not get agitated. Now, one more thing we need to understand, that the flame is there in the lamp, it requires air. If there is no air, if you close all the supply of air, the fire will get extinguished, isn't it? So that lamp requires air for the flame to exist, For the fire to exist, there is requirement of air, but too much of air will destroy the flame or will extinguish the flame, isn't it? So you see how beautiful example Krishna is giving. That body requires eating, sleeping, right? Body requires eating, sleeping, work, recreation, everything. But as much as it is required, we should give. If we give too much, it will destroy our bhakti. Just like oil lamp. The flame requires air. If there is no air, flame will not exist. The flame will get extinguished. So no air will also extinguish the flame. And too much of air, that means if there is strong wind, that will also extinguish the flame. So as much as required, we give. That is the meaning of regulation. Whatever body requires, we give so that our focus is on Krishna, not on anything else. Right? Because if we don't give the body, body will get agitated. If we give too much, then also body will get agitated. So we give as much as required so that our body and our consciousness can focus on Krishna. You see? So such a beautiful example given by Lord Krishna here. Now text number 20, 21, 22 and 23. These 4 shlokas, they are interrelated. So I'll read these 4 shlokas at a stretch and then I'll explain these 4 shlokas together. Okay. So text 20. Yatro paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam pashyannatmani tushyati yatro paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam pashyannatmani tushyati. Translation: when the mind is restrained from material activities and one is engaged in devotional service for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, one is able to see oneself on the spiritual platform. Thus, becoming fully satisfied, he is situated in the state of transcendental bliss. Now, text 21. Sukhamatyantikam yattad buddhigrahyamatīndriyam vetti yatra na chaivayam sthitaschalati tatvatah. Sukhamatyantikam yattad buddhigrahyamatīndriyam vetti yatra na chaivayam sthitaschalati tatvatah. Translation: that state of ultimate happiness is that which is experienced through transcendental senses. Once one is situated on this blissful platform, one never deviates from the truth. Now text 22, shloka number 22. Yam labdhva cha param labham manyate nadhikam tatah yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. Yam labdhva cha param labham manyate nadhikam tatah yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. Translation: and after attaining the supreme blissful state, one knows that there is nothing more to be gained. Being situated in such a position, one is not disturbed even amidst the greatest miseries. And the final one, text 23. Tam vidyad dukh sanyoga viyogam yoga sangitam. Tam vidyad dukh sanyoga viyogam yoga sangitam. Translation: this is real freedom from material miseries, and one should know that this is the real position of yoga, devotional service. Now you see. So what is Lord Krishna saying here? These 4 shlokas, Lord Krishna in these 4 shlokas, he covers the essence of the yoga processes which people follow. All yoga processes, they have only one goal, which is Krishna. So the essence is covered in these 4 shlokas. Very beautiful, very important shlokas. So Lord Krishna is telling in the 20th shloka, you see, Yatra uparamate chittam upramate. Now ramate, the word ramate means blissful state. Raman means pleasure, bliss. So uparamate means divine pleasure. Because material world, in this material world also, there may be some material pleasure. But here Lord Krishna is talking about uparamate. Uparamate means divine pleasure or transcendental pleasure. So yatra uparamate chittam, chittam is consciousness, niruddham yoga sevaya. Niruddha means to restrain oneself from material sense gratification. To restrain, when we restrain ourselves from external or material sense gratification, that is called niruddham. So why we restrain ourselves from material things? Because the goal of life is not to restrain ourselves from matter. It is not the goal of life. Detachment or renunciation is not the goal of life. We must know this, that renunciation is not the goal of life, because there are many animals who are very renounced. A monkey is the most renounced animal in this world. It does not stay at one place for more than 10 minutes. So can we call monkey a renounced or a renunciant or a saintly person? No. So renunciation is not the goal of life. The goal of life is to attain Krishna, and to attain love for Krishna, we renounce ourselves. Or it may be the other way around. Once we attain love for Krishna, we automatically develop higher taste and we reject lower taste. Automatically detachment develops. So detachment is not an artificial imposition on the soul. No. Detachment is a natural byproduct of bhakti. Detachment is a renunciation, or detachment is natural byproduct of love for Krishna. When we attain love for Krishna, detachment follows. We don't work for detachment. We work for Krishna. But detachment is a byproduct. It automatically comes. So in the Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitah Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Hetukam. Vasudeve Bhagavati. Vasudev means Krishna. Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. So a person who is engaged in Bhakti Yoga, who is engaged in loving devotional service to Krishna, what happens to him? Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. Prayojita means to be engaged in Bhakti. Janayati Ashu Vairagyam. Janayati Ashu. Janayati means awakening, or to develop. Janayati means development. Ashu Vairagyam. Ashu means very quickly. Vairagyam is detachment. So when a person is engaged in loving devotional service to Krishna, detachment automatically comes. And then he says, Jnanam Chaya Dhayatukam. Not only detachment comes, even divine knowledge comes. Divine knowledge is also a byproduct of love for Krishna. And that is why you see all great devotees of Krishna, whom we worship, Lord Hanuman, Devrishi Narad, Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruv Maharaj, all great pure devotees of Krishna, they are not working after knowledge or renunciation. They are working for Krishna, and knowledge and renunciation is automatic byproduct of that. Okay. So that is what Lord Krishna is saying here. Yatra uparamate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya. So niruddham, a person renounces himself. Why? Yoga sevaya. Sevaya means devotional service to Krishna, loving devotional service to Krishna. So to engage himself in loving devotional service to Krishna, a person detaches himself, or he keeps away from material sense gratification. Why? Uparamate chittam, because he has developed higher taste, superior taste. Okay. Then yatra chaivatmanatmanam pashyannatmani tushyati. Yatra cha eva atmanatmanam pashyan atmani. Pashyan atmani means antarmukhi. Antarmukhi. Antarmukhi means a person who is satisfied within. Bahirmukhi means that a person searches for pleasure outside his body. But antarmukhi means a person who is satisfied within. He does not need anything external for his pleasure. He is satisfied within. Why? Because Krishna as Paramatma is present within us. And he has direct relationship with Krishna. So he does not need anything external for his satisfaction, for his pleasure. So that is the meaning of Pashyannatmani Tushyati. Tushyati means he is self-satisfied. He is satisfied within. Tushyati means satisfaction or pleasure. So he is self-illuminated. He takes pleasure within. He does not need anything external for his pleasure. Then what happens? Sukham atyantikam yattat buddhi grahyam atindriyam. You see, Sukham atyantikam yattad. So now Lord Krishna is using the word Sukham, means pleasure. Atyantikam, ati antikam. Ant means pleasure which is limited. Ati antikam means unlimited pleasure. Now, pleasure which we have in this material world, it is limited. It is not unlimited. And many times I have given this example also, that when we eat food, in the beginning, that food gives us pleasure. But if we eat too much, that same food will become misery for us. That same food which was giving us pleasure will become a source of pain after some time. So this is the tendency of material pleasure. But that is not the tendency of spiritual pleasure. So what is spiritual pleasure? So Lord Rishabdev, Bhagwan Rishabdev, who is incarnation of the Supreme Lord Krishna, he told his sons, he gives instructions to his sons in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he says that Nayam deho deha bhajam driloke kashtan kama narhate vidbhujam ye. That my dear sons, Lord Rishabdev, he tells his sons that my dear sons, deha bhajam, the pleasure that you are deriving from bodily sense pleasure or sense gratification, that is available even to hogs or pigs. Vidbhujam means pigs. So pigs, they take pleasure in eating stool. So Lord Rishabdev is saying that pleasure derived from eating, sleeping, or bodily pleasure, that is available even to a stool eater like pig. So that is not the goal of human life, because animals cannot understand Krishna. They cannot develop higher taste. They cannot understand what is higher pleasure. That facility is only available to human beings. In other species also, plants are considered to be the lowest. Plants and Static living beings like plants, herbs, bushes, they are considered to be the lowest. You see, the more we do sense gratification, the more we lose our freedom in the next life. So a person who eats unethically or whimsically, a person who does whimsical sense gratification, next life he will not be given senses only. Just like you see plants and trees. They are living beings, but they don't have senses to enjoy matter. So that is considered to be the most condemned life. So those who do unrestricted sense gratification, they are given the body of plants or creepers in the next life. Right? So Sukham Atyantikam. So Lord Rishabdev, then he says, he tells his sons that this bodily sense pleasure is available even to animals. Therefore, Tapo Divyam Putra Kayena Sattvam Shuddhyed Yasmat Brahma Saukhyam Tvanantam. Therefore, my dear sons, you should work for Tapo Divyam. You should perform austerities. You should take pain. For what? For Divyam, to attain Krishna. Everyone's father should be like this, isn't it? Like Lord Rishabdev. What is he telling his sons? That my dear sons, don't waste your human life. You utilize your human life for attaining Krishna. Why? Brahma Sukham. Because when you touch Krishna, you attain pleasure, which is called Brahma Sukham. In this material world also, when you touch something which is for sense object, some sense object, there is some pleasure, but that does not last long. Just like when you touch an electric wire. When you touch an electric wire, you experience electricity, isn't it? Similarly, when we touch Krishna, there is a pleasure which we derive. So question may be asked, how do we touch Krishna? So in this age of Kali Yuga, we touch Krishna by Shravanam, by hearing from the spiritual master. When we hear from Guru about Krishna, when we hear Bhagavad Gita, when we are hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, we are actually touching Krishna through the ears. In the beginning, we may not realize. Why? Because in the beginning, we don't have that higher taste. But still we are touching Krishna. Gradually, when we keep doing it on a regular basis, then over a period of time, we develop higher taste. We gradually raise ourselves from material platform to spiritual platform, and then we start to experience that divine pleasure. Right? So what is Lord Krishna saying here? That Sukham Atyantikam. So this Brahma Sukha, the pleasure that we attain when we touch Krishna, Yattat Buddhi Grahyam Atindriyam. This pleasure cannot be attained by gross senses. You see, what is he saying? Grahyam Ati Indriyam. So these gross senses cannot give us divine pleasure. But you see, eyes are a medium through which we are seeing. Eyes are just a medium to see. That is why you see when a person dies, his eyes are taken and placed into some other person's body. That person starts seeing, but this person cannot see. Why? Because the seer has gone. Right? Spirit soul has gone. So now this body cannot see. But eyes are functioning. That is why when you replace the eyes, nowadays people donate their eyes. So you replace the eyes and you put those eyes in another person's body, that person will be able to see because eyes are working. But this person cannot see. Why? Because eyes are just a medium to see. Eyes cannot see. The capacity to see belongs to the soul. The capacity to hear, the capacity to touch, the capacity to speak, it all belongs to the spirit soul. Body cannot touch, hear, speak, see. When the soul leaves the body, body cannot do any of these things. So this capacity belongs to the soul. right? So spirit soul also has got form. In the Vedic scriptures, it is mentioned that only in human body we can realize Krishna. Why? Because human form is made after form of Krishna. Krishna has made this human body just like his body. That is why only in human body we can realize Krishna. So this human body, what we see, is cast over the spirit soul. Why our shirt has hands? Because we have hands. Why our pant has legs? Because we have legs. Right? So this body also is in this form because spirit soul also has got form. Of course, we cannot see that form as of now because it is spiritual, it is not material. And that is why spirit soul has also got senses. When we sleep, when we are dreaming, so when a person is dreaming, he never thinks himself that he is a dog, isn't it? In dream also, we know that we are human beings. You will never see a dream where you have become a dog. No. You will see that you are a human being. Why? Because you are identifying with this human body. And in dream also, we have eyes, we have ears, we have everything. Why? Because spirit, soul, because body has got eyes, ears, all the senses. So during dream also, you know that you have these senses. Similarly, because spirit soul has got these senses, eyes, ears, everything. That is why body also is able to see or experience all these things. So the real senses, they belong to the spirit soul. And that's what Lord Krishna is saying. That sukham atyantikam yattat buddhigraham atindriyam. So divine pleasure can only be experienced through these transcendental senses, which are the senses which belong to the spirit soul. Okay? Because body does not have senses. It's the spirit soul which has got senses and the capacity to enjoy the senses. It belongs to the spirit soul. Vetti atra na chaivayam sthitas chalati tattvataha. And Lord Krishna is saying that a person who knows this, sthitas chalati tattvataha. Tattvataha means truth, the absolute truth. And who is absolute truth? Krishna. So this sthitas chalati. Sthitas chalati means he never deviates from the truth. He's fixed up at the lotus feet of Krishna. He never deviates from Krishna. Such a person. Okay. Then the 22nd shloka, Lord Krishna, very beautiful shloka. Lord Krishna is saying, I'll just take 2-3 minutes more to explain these two shlokas left. So, yam labdhva cha aparam labham. Yam labdhva, labdhva means to attain. Aparam labham means higher gain. Labham means gain or profit. Manyate na adhikam. Tataha, na adhikam means there is no higher gain. So yam labdhva means Brahma Sukham, divine pleasure, which we attain by touching Krishna. So Lord Krishna is telling that yam labdhva, once a person has attained divine pleasure by touch of Krishna, aparam labham, there is no higher gain in life. He knows that there is nothing higher to gain. This is the highest pleasure, highest gain of human existence. There is nothing higher to be attained. Yasmin sthito. And once a person is situated on this platform, na dukkhena, gurunapi. Guru means heavy. So even though the most heavy, dukkhena means misery. Even though a person may be in between heaviest of miseries, na vichalyate, he will not get shaken, he will not get agitated. Even though he may be amongst greatest miseries in life, but he will not get agitated. Why? Because he has attained the highest platform. There is no higher gain. There is no higher pleasure. There is no higher profit in human life than touch of Krishna, Brahma Sukha, divine pleasure. Just like when we touch electric wire, we experience some electric current. Similarly, when we touch Krishna, just imagine that exhilarating experience. It's exhilarating, cannot be explained in words, right? So touching Krishna. So we touch Krishna by ears in Kali Yuga. By hearing from Guru, gradually we become qualified to touch Krishna. First, we have to become qualified. That qualification we develop by blessings and by following the spiritual master by his blessings and by hearing from him. Now, the last shloka of today's session, 23rd shloka, Lord Krishna is telling, Tam vidyad dukha sanyogam viyogam yoga sangitam. So he's saying, Tam vidyad. Vidyad means knowledge. So he's saying that knowing this, by knowing this, dukha sanyoga viyogam. Viyog means separation. And dukha sanyog, dukh means misery. So this is how a person frees himself. He liberates himself from all miseries. And yoga sangitam, when he is yoga sangitam, when he is situated on the platform of yoga. Yoga means union with Krishna. So in this way, when a person is in union with Krishna, when he is on the platform of loving relationship with Krishna, that is the true platform of freeing oneself from all material miseries. That is called, and such a person, even within this human body, is liberated. Although he will have a body like a human being, but he is liberated, even as a human being. And such human beings are called Muktatma, Jivan Mukta or Muktatma. And even in this human body, they are liberated. So that is what Lord Krishna is saying here in these shlokas. Very beautiful explanations given by Lord Krishna. And this is how we can also free ourselves from these material miseries. So no pain, no gain. That pain which we take to touch Krishna, that pain that we take to associate with Krishna is called bhakti. So that is what we are seeing here. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming for today's session. If you have any questions, any of you, if you want to ask anything, today I'll not be able to take questions from you, but all of you are most welcome to post your questions on WhatsApp. Any of you, if you have any question, those who are hearing afterwards also, you can always post your questions on WhatsApp. I keep getting questions from many people. So I try to answer as early as possible. Okay. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.